Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Doug. I'm a wildlife photographer from Gilroy, California. In this video, I'm going to share the results of a whole bunch of shootout experiments I've done with this little guy right here. This is the new or relatively new Canon RF 70-200 millimeter f2.8L USM Z. The Z stands for zoom, specifically internal zoom, and thank you Canon for finally giving us a RF 70-200 that has an internal zoom. Canon makes two other RF 70-200s, an f2.8 and an f4. Both of those are L lenses, and here's the f4 right here. I've had this for a long time. Love the lens, it's great. One problem though. That's the problem. It's got the telescoping barrel, which is difficult to operate under fast-moving conditions like sports, fox photography. I use it mainly for fox and coyote seasons, and it's got to be fast. I've missed a lot of shots because I just can't grab this thing and zoom in and out. Compared to the Z, as I'll just call it, I can turn this with one finger and zoom completely to 70-200, less than a quarter turn of the barrel. So that is very cool. Other features include the ability to take teleconverters. Very cool. The other two RF 70-200s can't do that. So I can put a 1.4 teleconverter on here and push it out to 280 millimeters, or I can put a 2.0 teleconverter on here and push it out to 400 millimeters, which is a birding length lens. So very cool. In addition, it has a nice little foot mount right here, so you can mount it on a tripod or on a monopod really easily. The other two lenses don't have that. So no brainer, go out and pick it up, right? Well, hold on, there's a problem. And the problem is the cost. It costs a little over $3,000 US. I kid you not. That's a lot for a RF 70-200 for a bird photographer who doesn't use it that much. At least I don't use it that much. I use it in late summer, early fall for fox season, as I mentioned. So right now it's on the shelf. It's eagle season, it's gold eagle season right now. I mean, it really better be worth it for me to shell out $3,000. I could buy, well, I mean, I already did, but if you're interested, you can buy the f4 version, again, an L quality lens for $1,500. Versus $3,000. So it's half the price of this one. And that begs the question of, is this really $1,500 better than the RF4 version? And that's what this video is about. We're going to be doing a lot of different experiments, shooting these two out with test charts, with stuffed animals, with real animals, and I'll be able to tell you at the end of the video exactly what my thoughts are on this lens. In addition, we're going to shoot it out against this one. This is the Canon RF 100-500 f7.1L, a very sharp lens, a very popular lens, and it's about $2,800-$2,900, so it's just a little less than this one. So, I mean, can't the 100-500 do everything that the 70-200 can? That's another question. Now, of course, it can't go down to 70 millimeters, which is why I need this lens when the fox gets so close, or shooting bear or something that's huge. But it'll be interesting to see how this one does against this. For fun, we'll shoot it out against the RF 100-400 f8, a non-L lens, kind of cheap lens, about $700, $800. So I'm not expecting too much, but just to kind of give us a comparison. It'll be nice to see how that does as well. We'll put teleconverters on it and see how it does, see how much it loses. We'll see how it performs with teleconverters against these two lenses. And we'll bring these two lenses into the mix with teleconverters. This is the sharpest lens I own. This is the Canon EF 300mm prime f2.8L USM IS2, a very sharp lens. I did a video on this one already. So that'll be a 300mm shootout. And then we have a 400mm shootout. We'll put it against the DO here. This is the Canon EF 400mm prime f4.0 IS2 DO. Another very sharp lens. Both of these lenses are independently over $10,000, approaching $14,000 if you want to buy them new. So it'll be interesting to see how they stack up against the Z as well. And then the last purpose of the video is I'm going to try to debunk a rumor that's going around on the internet. Several sources I have seen on YouTube and on online reviews say that the Z here is the sharpest lens Canon makes, period, end of sentence. And it takes teleconverters amazingly well, so well that you won't lose any sharpness. Those are really huge statements, and I seriously doubt they're true, but that's another reason I picked this up, just to see if indeed this is the sharpest lens there is out here. With regard to the cameras used, I primarily use the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. That's my go-to camera. A few of the experiments were done with the Canon EOS R5 Mark I and the EOS R7 Mark I, just to kind of round things out. This video is not going to be a comparison between those two, but I'll tell you they all did very well with handling the Z lens. Just a quick word about experimental setup. I know probably most of you don't care about that. And I fully described it in my video shooting the DO out versus the 300L out if you're really interested, or you can just send me an email. I can answer questions. But in general, everything was done on a 75-pound capacity tripod, so stability was not an issue. Auto stabilization was turned off in all the lenses because we don't need that. It's on a tripod. Use the same CF Express card, same SD card. The push method, I chose to push the shutter gently down twice, and I shot at 16 frames per second. And most of the time I used electronic for the shutter mode. On the R5 Mark I, I used electronic first curtain. Everything was shot in full RAW, and once the experiment was over, I dumped those photos into Lightroom and culled them painstakingly, finding the sharpest image. No denoise, no adjustments were made of any kind. Everything is shot completely raw. The champion image of each sub-experiment was exported as a full JPEG, and then those were pulled into Photoshop and compared. And we'll look at that specifically when we get to that section. I'll talk a little bit more about that. All right, let's get to the results of this experiment. As I mentioned before, I've done over 30 experiments with this lens. And if you're just joining us, the lens, the star of the show, we're calling it the Z. Of course, it's the Canon RF 7200mm f2.8 USM Z, Z for short. So here we go. Let's start with aperture. Let's find out where the Z is actually the sharpest at. All right, so here's a bunch of experiments, actually 6 different experiments you're looking at here. And we're starting at the bottom. This would be a cut through that same test chart that we saw. This would be f2.8, this would be f4, this would be f5.6, f8, f11, and f16. If I want to reveal where I'm at, all I have to do is right click and it tells us where we are. That's f5.6 and that's f11, taken at 3200, and you see how that works? So, all right. So from this distance, we can't really see much, so we're going to have to zoom in a little bit. Let's get rid of that, and let's zoom in. And even from this distance, I mean, everything looks really, really sharp, I would say, from my 4K screen here. So we're going to have to zoom in even more to see anything. So let's really pixel peep and look at these first 2 players. So this is the target zone in here. So you can see like 235 versus this 235. It's definitely a little bit sharper here. I don't know if you can see that or not. Maybe I can blow up even a little bit more. You can look at 225. So, but the trick is, if you really want to see a difference in sharpness with regard to aperture, go out to one of the edges. So let's zip out to the edge. And now we can surely see a 75 here is pretty blurry compared to that 75, which is still blurry. So that means that 2.8 is not as sharp as f4. And we can even go up a little higher. Let's go to the next experiment, sub-experiment. And you can see we're sharpening up here. So this would be 5.6. And again, that's f4. So definitely getting sharper at 5.6. Let's zip back to the center. And definitely sharper, right? Compared to that 245 versus that 245. So 5.6 is the winner. So far, let's bring in a new challenger. Now let's bring in f8. Confirm, F8. And to me, it looks like it cleans up even a little bit more. Again, very, very close. Let's go see what the side has to say. And yeah, I would say that's really sharp compared to that. So F8 is the sharpest. Let's look at F11. F11 even looks pretty good. You didn't lose a whole bunch there. Let's sit back to the middle. So yeah, so F8, F11 are looking pretty similar. Now if we go to F16, okay, now we're definitely getting a little more blurry and more grainy. There's 6400 ISO, F16. Still doesn't look bad, so let's see what it would look like on the edges. And yeah, definitely more grain in here, I think, from the aperture. Still fairly sharp, but not as sharp as down here. So if I had to pick one, I'd say F8 is probably my favorite. Even F8 and F11 are both usable. So that's the story with the aperture. Let's get to the next experiment. All right, teleconverters. I got rid of the chart because you know where this came from now. So let's take a look at how the Z handles teleconverters. You guys have been waiting for this one, I bet some people have. Especially given some of the statements out there online that it takes teleconverters like they're not even there. You lose no sharpness at all. Maybe we can see where that came from right now. Let's line them up here a little bit better so we can see. All right. So this would be 200 millimeters. This is the Z without any teleconverter. That's 280, 400. And from this viewing distance, they all look really good. So I could see where the statement, it takes teleconverters amazingly well, came from. Let's pixel peep a little bit more. Just look at the bottom two. And let's see. Yeah, it does. Right? You guys can look for yourself. You can look at, this ruler had a little texture to it, so when things are sharp, you can see all these little kind of bubbles of the texture. Both very sharp, but there's a caveat here. Let's go this way a little. Let's keep going. They're still pretty comparable. Okay, maybe we're starting to get a little blurry. Let's get out to the edge. Okay, yeah, now we've lost something. So this is where the Z has trouble with teleconverters. Look it out toward the edge. That 350 and that 345, comparing the edge to the no teleconverter Z. Definitely sharper here. There's no question about that. So we have lost something going toward the edges. All right, let's compare the other. The 2.0 teleconverter, that's 400 versus 280 with a 1.4 teleconverter. What's the story there? Back to the middle. Can even pull these down on top of each other. Why not? Just to make it easier for us. 225. Again, in the center, it looks pretty good. Start moving out to the other way. Let's start moving out to the left edge. Let's zip out there. All right, we're starting to lose something already. We're not even to the edge. Oh, yeah. So 35 is not looking good. Compare that 5 to that 5. So we've lost another degree of sharpness with the 2x teleconverter. The bottom line with the test chart here is it gets soft toward the edges. All right, we're still staying with teleconverters. You can see the 3 right here. Now this is a very typical shot that you might take. The bird is maybe 15-20% of the frame. If you're using a high megapixel camera like the R5 Mark II, you can make a beautiful shot with this. You can crop in like crazy and make this thing look really, really nice. So this is a real world image. So let's see how the teleconverters do. And you can see this. These are crops right through the eyes. So these are 3 different tests cropped right through the eyes, and they're pulled over here. as I've explained before. So let's see what the eyes have to tell us. Let's line them up a little bit. Start zooming in. That should do it. Alright, so down here we have no teleconverter, 5K ISO. So lots of ISO going on early in the morning, which is my Fox typical scenario. What do you think? These two look pretty good. The eyes are nice and glassy. You can see the little hairs around the iris look good. The nose hairs. Pretty good, I think. Yeah, even if we go up and look at these two. Pretty good. Right? Just like we saw in the test chart. Very sharp in the middle. Didn't lose too much. Now we're starting to lose some right there compared to here, perhaps, and here, definitely. So we've lost a little as we go to the edges. But look when we get to the edge of the bird. So here's the no teleconverter down here at 200 millimeters. Looks great. We've definitely lost some on the bird edge here with the 1.4, right at 280 millimeters. And then, wow, we've lost a lot with the 2x teleconverter. Not good. And then if we just keep going further, we can see the rock looks really out of focus. Not quite as bad. And not so bad. So we really saw the same theme here with the teleconverters. Nice and sharp in the middle, but you're going to suffer on the edges here. Let's go to the next experiment. All right, let's get away from the teleconverters and start comparing lenses. And here are the players. So we got the Z, we got the non-Z. That's the Canon EF 7200 millimeter f4, which is the L quality lens. This is the $1,500 lens versus the $3,000 lens. And we can also look at the RF, the Canon 100 to 400 f8. We can look at a strong challenger here. And this is the Canon 100 to 500 7.1, which is an L lens. So we have some tough competition. But let's start by just looking at the $3,000 lens versus the $1,500 lens. This is probably going to be a popular spot for people to come to who are going to buy this thing. All right, let's get right to blowing this thing up. And they look pretty similar. I would almost say that this one on the top might have a little advantage, but very, very close. So let's get out to our edges, which usually tell the story. We'll start creeping out there. Let's see if anybody starts failing. Now we're getting a little blurry at 135 to 135. Let's just zip out to the edge. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so this lens is really struggling on the edges. And I didn't even go all the way to the edge. So this is really struggling on the edges. You can see 35 is much sharper. Not good. So I would almost guarantee you that this top ruler is going to be the f4 version of the lens. So this is the non-Z lens, $1,500 lens. And this is the Z. So this is what your $1,500 gets you. It's much sharper on the edges compared to the f4 version of the lens. Oh, let's just to save time. It looks the same on the other side. All right, so that's one experiment. Let's change things up here. The non-Z is fired. Oh, we can leave that up for right now. Let's see how it does against the $700 to $800 lens, just for fun. Why not? Okay, so we kind of know who the players are now. Let's line these guys up. Again, in the center, they both look really good. Magnification, this is a 100 to 400, and I dialed it back to 200. Looks like it didn't quite get 200. Might be a smidge bigger. All right, let's go out to the edges and see how they do. See if we have a winner. Yep, this one's struggling. Look at 75 to the region above 65. Yeah, so not good. Let's just look at the f4 version of the lens versus this 100 to 400 f8 version of the lens. Of course, at 200, we're not at well, we are at f8, but you don't have to shoot at f8 at 200 with this lens. So yeah, this Canon 100 to 400, the $700 lens, kicked the butt of the non-Z here, which is twice the cost of this 100 to 400. So pretty impressive. The RF 100 to 400 f8, very good. It doesn't hang with the $3,000 Z lens, but nevertheless, quite impressive, I would say. All right, let's bring a stronger competitor in. Let's bring in the 100 to 500 RF 7.1L. There it is. Let's actually turn this experiments over. Let's get rid of these losers, I guess we could call them. All right. Start in the middle. See what we can see. Same story. Looks sharp in the middle to me. What about you guys? Should we blow it up? I hear somebody saying blow it up more. Yeah, very sharp in the middle. I mean, close again. You could hallucinate that this is a little sharper than that. That's the Z. Remember, this is the Z down here. So that's the 500. Let's zip out to the edge. Just get right to the edge and see. Again, the Z wins at the edge. From edge to edge, the Z is a very sharp lens. Maybe great for landscape photography. Great for birders too. I mean, you want a nice and crisp edge on some images if it's a beautiful background. But yeah, it clearly beats the 500 on this edge. All right, so pretty impressive. Strong performance by the Z. The surprise was the RF 100 to 400 f8 did really well. Okay, let's go to the next one. I hear somebody saying compare it to the 100 to 400. Okay, we can do that. That'd be an interesting experiment. Little bonus experiment here. So I won't even tell you which one is which. Let's get to the middle. One of them is a almost $3,000 lens, and one of them is a $700 lens. So in the middle, pretty close. I think this is struggling up here, wherever this is. That's got to be the 100 to 400, and it is. So pretty good on the edge, though. Look at that. So very close. It definitely hangs with a much more expensive lens. So surprise of the experiment, the Canon RF 100 to 400 f8 did very well for $700. Let's get to the next experiment. All right, just wanted to show you side by side here what's going on. So again, a nice background. We have the non-Z versus the Z. Let's just do a background one since we're doing pretty good with time. How does the $1,500 lens hold up to the $3,000 lens? Looks pretty similar to me. Maybe this is a little bit more creamy background. You can see the sticks are blurred out more than here. I would guess this would be the non-Z over here. That's actually the Z over there. Okay. So maybe me just hallucinating. That's the Z. Make sure you... Oops, that's the non-Z. That's the Z, yeah. So it definitely hangs with regard to bokeh. I mean, that looks the same to me. Even that even looks a little more, just a smidgen more blurred out. But anyway, let's get to the experiment part here. Definitely the colors are the same, so it's great with that regard. The focusability, I didn't do an experiment, but they both focus really, really quickly. Don't have any problems with that, or complaints with that. Let's get to the picture. So this time I did vertical strips right through the eye here, narrow strips, so we can compare with each lens. That's what we're seeing over here. And let's see who's the sharpest. Let's blow them up. Let's just look at the eye first. So this is right where the focal point was set. Used a single focus point right on the eye here, which would be the left eye. From this depth, or from this viewing distance, they all look pretty good, don't they? Now there's not going to be any focus breathing here because the bird is not huge in the frame. So these are all real 200. Let's zoom in. This is before the sun came up. You can see the sun would come up right there. Check the iris hairs. They all look pretty good. Yeah, it's very, very close. For me, it's too close to call. Let's start getting away from the focus point. Let's get down to this fur. Can look at the contrasty area of the fur. Looks good there, looks good there. Looks good on my 4K monitor. I really can't tell the difference yet. Let's keep getting further away. Let's go down to this. So now we can start to see maybe a little, that looks really nice. Now we can see maybe a little difference. That's really nice looking there, nice and crisp. That's pretty crisp too. Maybe just a smidge more grainy, a little more contrasty. Now we're starting to fall apart maybe a little bit here. But again, everything's too close to reveal. Let's get even further away from the focus point strike area. Get down toward the feet. We're starting to lose a little bit here, but you can still see some pretty sharp strands down here. Okay, we've lost some here, so we got a winner, and we've lost more over here for sure. This is the loser. This whole area looks kind of grainy. This, I bet this is the non-Z, I would guess, and it is the non-Z. This is a 5.6 aperture experiment. I guess this is the... Oh, I didn't guess that. I was going to say that's probably the 500. So 500 is right here. So that's 100 to 500 at 200 millimeters. So pretty impressive. It does, I would say it defeats the Z here. So 500 is definitely hanging, but let's go further because it's sitting on a rock. And the further we get away from that focal point, now we can see the Z's strength toward the edges. So we get down to the edges, look at the much sharper here, the grain of the rock and this little moss patch. So yeah, just kind of a little quirk, I guess, for whatever reason it didn't resolve down here. Just maybe a little imperfection in the lens, but that's the way it goes sometimes. But when you get down to the edge, really good. So real happy, edge to edge. Z is tough to beat. Let's go to the next experiment. Oh, okay. So now this is the 280 millimeter experiment. So we're putting a 1.4 teleconverter on, pushing it out to 280 millimeters, and we're comparing it against the 100 to 500 7.1, and for the first time, the sharpest lens that I own, which is the Canon EF 300 millimeter prime f2.8 L IS2 super sharp lens. Now we kind of know something already about the Z with regard to teleconverters. It's a little soft to the outside, but let's see how it does in this experiment. And I did pull the 300 millimeter back to 280 by just decreasing resolution on the long edge in Lightroom, so I didn't lose or gain anything by doing that. It's perfectly legal to do that. Pretty crisp looking up here, whoever that is. First thing I see. Zoom in a little bit more. So nice. Let's see how this one does. Let's work on these two first. They all look pretty good, right? Yeah, they all look good in the center. All right, let's zip over to the edge and see what's going on here. All right, really sharp there. Yeah, we got a winner over here. Who is that? That's got, well, it's short. We know who that is. That's the 300L. So clearly, clear winner there. How about these two? So this guy's lacking, whoever that is. This guy's hanging in there pretty good. But let's see who this loser is here. That's the Z. That's what we would expect. It does get a little soft toward the edges. The 100-500 is looking pretty good here. In fact, we can drag it down. Let's drag the edges to edges here. Yeah, the 300L has it a little bit, but that's pretty close. Pretty impressive for the 100-500 on this experiment. All right, let's go to the next experiment. Okay, here's the 400mm challenge. So the Z has a 2.0 teleconverter on, and we're shooting it out against the 300L with a teleconverter. So that's 420, and I pulled it back to 400. All right, let's take a look and see how the 400mm challenge goes. I can't see any difference at this level. Let's keep pixel peeping. So this chest chart is really big in the frame at 400mm. So everything, any lens, if you're super, super close, is going to render sharp. And that's what we're seeing here. So let's get out to the edges and see if we can see a difference out there. 155, let's pull this edge over. Yeah, that's definitely sharper than this. Maybe it's better just to do this. Yeah, so this is the winner, I would predict. This is the 300L with a 1.4 teleconverter. Pretty impressive, right? That's just a super lens, that 300L. It looks almost as sharp here as it did in there. It takes teleconverters amazingly well. So what about between these two? So this is the winner between the top and the middle competition. That's the 500. And that's the Z up there. So the Z gets beat again on this chart. Real animal. So this was my Fox season. I was really focused on Fox. You don't know how hard I worked to get this shot, because if you know anything about gray fox, they don't like to sit still. They are constantly on the move. Let's just look at the two side by side. So we're ending the experiments with a Z versus non-Z. $3,000 versus $1,500. I would be happy with either of these shots. These are really, really nice. Nice detailed fur. Eyes nice and sharp. You can see the whiskers nice and sharp. Now this is as real world as you get. Not super big in the frame, but in the same position. So let's pixel peep. So pretty impressive. By the way, the bokeh looks about the same on each one. So let's take a look at this one. Through the eyes. So here's a slice through the eyes. Let's see what the eyes, and let's pixel peep. Let's get right to it. It might be just a little too big. What do you think? Well, the eye's glassy. I mean, we can see the horizon there. This is before the sun came up. This region looks good in both. How about these little hairs right here? High contrast, these little top hairs coming down. Really sharp on this one. Maybe just not quite as sharp on this one. They stand out much more on this one, but they're still sharp, I guess. Now let's look at the fur around the eye. So it's looking pretty good there. I think we're losing a little bit down here, but it's really close. How about the fur in front of the eye? Okay, it's pretty hard. Let's get away from, and this is the focal target right here, the eye. Let's start moving away from that. All right, we have a little problem here, so it's getting a little less sharp compared to up here is very sharp. I think that's all I need to see. So I'm going to predict this is the Z up here, and it is the Z. And this is going to be the non-Z. Still pretty good, right? Be pretty happy with that shot. Let's go out to the edge. And then now this is way behind the focal plane. So that's where this one looks a little better because the focal plane is a little wider on the non-Z because of focus breathing. Okay, very good. How about this one? Let's look at the ear. See if we can see a difference. Nice right there. That little tuft of hair is really nice looking. How about this fur versus this fur? Can you guys pick a winner yet? We got some different depths going on here. That's why this is blurry. It's further away from the focus spot. Really impressed with the non-Z. This is really nice. I mean, if we look in this region, though, you can see little strands of hair here. It's a little out of focus. I'd predict this is the non-Z here. And it is. And this is the Z. ISO 8000 on this Fox, so not bad. And no denoise, nothing. These are raw photos. All right, let's wrap it up. We've seen a lot of experiments, and all of which surround this little lens right here. For the last time, the Canon RF 70 to 200 millimeter f2.8 L USM Z. I'm just calling it the Z. And what do we think of this thing? Number one, with regard to sharpness, is it the sharpest lens in the world? Well, we can say that it's pretty darn sharp, but not so much sharper than these other lenses in the middle, but on the edge of the frame, it is really sharp. It defeated easily the f4 version of the 70 to 200, that's RF 7200 f4L, and it defeated this 100 to 500 as well, which is a very popular lens. That's the RF 100 to 500 f7.1, and of course it defeated this little lens right there. That's the Canon RF 100 to 400 f8. So you can say for pounder in its weight class here in the 70 to 200 millimeter range, it is a very sharp lens, and the key is it goes all the way to the edges, and we saw that in all the experiments. And as I said, I've done over 30 experiments with this lens, and they all say the same thing. I only showed you 7 or 8. I can't remember how many I showed you. So check. It is a very sharp lens. What about its ability to take teleconverters? Is it amazing with teleconverters? That myth is busted. It did not do well with teleconverters. In the very center of the frame, it did great. I mean, it did okay. You couldn't see a loss. But as you move toward the edges of not the frame, but the edges of the bird or of the target or of the test chart, it got significantly less sharp, noticeably. So it does not take teleconverters as well as everybody says. You could not make this a 400 f5 and go out shooting birds with. I mean, you can, but they're not going to be great images. So if you're buying it for that, that myth is busted. What about its shootability? I didn't even include those experiments. It focuses lightning fast, just as fast as all of these do. Maybe a little bit faster than this $700 RF 100 to 400, but its focusability is great. Its ability to render colors is just as good as these other ones as well. So it's not amazing in that regard. Its bokeh is not any better than these as well. But the key is it is sharp from edge to edge. That's where it shines. And of course, let's not forget the internal zoom, which is why I bought this lens in the first place. That is so cool. I'm not going to miss the little fox running right at me when I can zoom this fast with one finger, unlike the clunky, I don't know if I'll demonstrate this thing again, the telescoping zoom, which just is not great. It's so much tighter than the Z here. And the bottom line, is it worth the extra $1,500? Remember, this f4 version's a $1,500 lens. This is a $3,000 lens. It is definitely worth it just because of its sharpness from edge to edge. I didn't mention its lack of focus breathing. Remember, we saw significant focus breathing with the f4 here. At close up, it's not really 200. It's probably like a 180 or 190. This is a true 200 here, but it is a great lens. Let's not forget the little foot that's included. I think that's a nice little bonus there as well. So yeah, it's definitely worth the price if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, I mean, I shot with this for a few years and I was really happy with it. It's just I didn't even notice it wasn't sharp on the edges. But this is a great lens as well, the RF 7200 f4. So you can't go wrong with that. But I would hold off on buying this and save a little bit longer and just get yourself the Z here. You'll be really happy with that. What about between the Z and the 100 to 500 f7.1? Now that's a tougher call. If you're a birder, wildlife photographer, I think I would start with this lens because it can go down to 100 and it can go to 500. You can put a 1.4 and go to 750. It's a versatile lens. This has to be in your bag first, I would say. The Z is more of a specialty lens. Like I said, this is my fox and coyote lens where things are really, really close. Maybe shooting bear would be good for as well. All right, that'll wrap it up. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving me a thumbs up and leave any questions down below. I'll get them answered. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss videos like this. All right, we'll see you guys in the next one.